Hello class, this is week 5 on arrangement or arranging a collection. We're going to talk about provenance and original order. So, what is provenance? Well, there's a lot of definitions for provenance, and you read it in chapter 5. But basically, provenance is protecting the history of the collection. So basically what I'm saying is that let's say you get a collection from a family, how that collection was created, why it was created, who the person was that created the collection. That's a lot of important information. And if you separate the collection and file them in different places, or remove something or misplace something, you're basically destroying provenance. You're losing the importance of how the created collection came to be. In the museum setting, when people acquire, say, a famous painting or a historical painting, they want to know everything about that painting, like who painted it, where did it come from, who owned it, why did they own it, and like how did the family get this painting? Well, maybe the great-grandfather, worked in London and he knew the artist and he bought it from the artist, and then it came to the United States and ended up in some museum, and then the museum sold it, and so forth and so on and so on. So the history of a collection, how it came to be, is very important. So we protect the provenance of collections. And sometimes you'll get collections that are very similar to each other. For example, maybe somebody donated a collection of letters from a famous author because that person used to work with that author, because maybe he's an author, who knows? And then say a year later, another person donates a collection of letters from the same author, but maybe because that person was a professor when the author was, very, very young and before he became famous. So that has a totally different history on it. You would never mix those two collections together just because they're letters from the same author, because how they came about is very different. And that history of how those collections were created is the provenance. So we respect the history of the collection. So the French word respect des fonds means provenance. And I kind of underlined in blue something that you need to know. The French, although they knew the importance of respecting provenance, were a little naughty, because what they used to do was they would break collections and put them into subject order, and that would destroy provenance. So they don't do that anymore, of course. We all, as archivists, know that that is not how you do business, but that was, in the 18th, 19th century. But that's where it comes from. So the important word is provenance, and it's one of the fundamental principles of archives. So the third definition I like the best, referring to the individual, family, organization that created or received the item in a collection. The principle of provenance, or the respect des fonds, dictates that records of different origins, provenance, be kept separate to preserve the context. That's really, really important. And I'm trying to explain this in a way that makes sense to you. Now, original order, that's a little bit different. And I have a couple different definitions. All these come from the Society of American Archivists glossary, which you can find online. Original order is another fundamental principle of archives. So when you get a collection, we try to maintain the original order, but here's the key thing. Not every collection comes in its original order. It may have been at one time in original order, but then got tossed around through the years and papers got messed up and misfiled. And then you got a collection that's in a mess, and you have to find the original order. Sometimes you can. Sometimes you can figure it out, especially when it involves invoices or correspondences. It kind of makes sense organizing them by the creation date. And so you can actually find the original order. But sometimes you really don't know what's going on. And then you have to create the order. You have to make sense of the order. So original order is very important, and it's one of the most challenging things for archivists. And I will talk further about that. I have another lecture about trying to figure out an arrangement to a collection that I think may be helpful to you. So original order is not the same as the order in which materials were received. That's number 2. I want to point that out. Items that were clearly misfiled may be refiled in their proper location. and materials may have had the original order disturbed, often during inactive use, before transfer to the archives. So that's an example of a collection coming to you not in its original order. You just have to find the order. And if you can't find the order, then you're responsible for creating a logical order to it. So there are 5 levels of arrangement. And the 5 levels of arrangement is, number 1, the repository. That means the archives itself, the institution that houses the archives. I'll give you some examples. A historical society that contains archives, that's a repository. The university has a college archives. The department where the archives are, housed, that's a repository. Museums that house artifacts and archives, that's a repository. So we'll think of it as a building that houses these amazing collections. A record group. A record group, to me, I see as the collection in the repository. One collection in the repository is the record group. Now, within the record group would be series. Series are categories in the record group. So let's say you have a collection from, say, Benjamin Franklin. I'll just pick that, Benjamin Franklin. So in his collection, this record group, are diaries and letters, photographs, deeds. Those are all different items that have specific functions. So correspondences are a way of communicating with other people. So that's a series in its own. Diaries. Ben Franklin kept diaries of his day-to-day activities. Diaries have a totally different function from correspondences. So that's another series. And then deeds to lands. Well, deeds to lands have a specific function. It shows ownership. Not the same as letters and not the same as diaries. That's a series. So think of series like a category. Now, a file unit. Okay, so let's say you have a box, and the box is correspondences. And in the boxes are a whole bunch of folders. And each folder is for each year of letters that Benjamin Franklin had. So let's say the first folder is, 1850 or whatever. So those are all letters that he received in 1850, starting from January to December. And then the next folder is 1851, and then so forth. So each file is a file unit. And that file unit is for the year, say, 1858 or whatever. Okay, that's a file unit. Now the item is the individual items in the file unit. So one letter in that folder dated January 1st, 1852, that's an item. Okay, so let's try this again. Oh, let's go back. Okay, so number 1, top level, the repository. Here's a wonderful room of beautiful archival boxes of collections. I love when I see things like this. So that is your repository. That's your repository. Number 2, record group. Here's a collection. Just pretend in your mind that they just came off the shelves. These 3 boxes, there's one collection. That's a record group. Within the record group is a bunch of letters, and they're put into these folders. These letters are just an example of, old letters. But that's a series. It is a category in that collection, in that group. And we put that, before I go further, here's another series. These are diaries. So that's a separate series from correspondences. Series are, again, materials that have the same function, created for a specific function. So diaries, keeping day-to-day events in your life, is different from letters. It doesn't matter if the letter is written to somebody that tells them what they did that day. Letters are correspondence between people, okay? A diary is something you keep yourself. It's a different function. And then let's say we have invoices. These are all like financial papers. That's not the same as correspondences. These are business invoices. So that's a separate series, okay? Now, file unit. Here's a box. All these wonderful folders, all nicely labeled. Each one of those folders is a file unit. And let's just pretend that each one of these folders have correspondences for every year that's happened. Those are file units. And of course, this whole box is, say, a series of correspondences. And then we have the item. So let's say we take a folder out, any folder. Let's say this is a folder photographs. One item in that folder, that's the item. That's the bottom. And when we talk about processing collections, sometimes we say, well, we're going to process the collection down to folder level, okay? Not to item level. We don't itemize archival collections like we would do museum artifacts, because it would take us forever. So we group them together and we say, okay, folder 5 has letters from 1851. We don't list all the letters in the folder one by one by one. You don't have to do that. As long as we can tell the researcher this is the folder you want, because the letter that you are looking for may be in this folder. So, order at the series level, okay? Series. I want to explain again because, we're going to be doing an assignment where you're going to be creating series. Series, those are the items that were created for a specific function, okay? That means like correspondences created for a specific function. And personal correspondences and business correspondences are two separate series. But you say, why? They're correspondences. Ah, yes, they are. But one is personal, and their function is writing, personal experiences of your day-to-day life, maybe letters to your friends or mother or father, sisters, brothers. But the business letters, these are different. They're written that maybe you're a business person, and these letters were written to other companies, and they have a totally different function of how you ran your business. And that's why they have two series. The creator determines the order within the series. That means that when you get a collection and there's a group of correspondences already, you can see these are correspondences. I can see this. There's one series right there, and you put them. They're in the folder, and you're going to put them in the order of the creation date. So you can put the oldest one first because that was written first, and then the most current one in the back. So if you have letters from 1858. The January is going to come first, and February, and so forth until the December. You don't file them like business records in your office, like you're director of a library. You put the most current one up front because you're actively working their active files. But in archives, you're going to get these letters, and they're already in order. You're just going to kind of switch it around and put the oldest one first. But the creator puts those letters in order. What we as archivists do is we have to determine how to put how we're going to organize a series. Are we going to put the first series will be correspondences, then the second series will be diaries, and the third series will be invoices. It all depends on what kind of collection you have, especially if you have business records. We usually organize business records in a hierarchical manner in the way the company functions. So usually board of directors, which oversee the companies, we always file their stuff first, and then maybe the letters from the president. He goes second, he or she goes second because the board oversees the president. Then after that could be departments and so forth. We always think, kind of a logical order. So the archivist determines what order to put the series in, but the creator determines the order within the series. So here's an example of series order. So on the right are four series. You got president's letters, you got board of trustees, then you got vice president letters, then you got the college bylaws. So what order should they go first? Thinking of the hierarchy of these archival records, these business records and whatnot. In this case, these are college records. Think about what's going to go first. Well, what happens is the college archivist is going to put the college bylaws first because of maybe he or she feels that, the bylaws are very important. They tell us how the college was established, the whole history. So they're going to have college bylaws from the inception of the college, maybe in 1858, to present. They're going to be on top of the list because you can see what happened, what kind of changes were going on in the college from its early years to present. So that goes right on top. Then the second series will be the board of trustees. These are very important people, and the president answers to the board, so they have authority. So they'll go next. Then the president's letters will come next, and then of course the VP after the president. So you can do it in this way. Sometimes you can have the president's secretary letters can go right beneath the president's letters, but that becomes like a little subgroup there. But that's kind of the hierarchical method you use in series order. So there are various ways that collections are arranged. Sometimes they're organized alphabetically. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, maybe you got letters from various peoples. Let's say you have a collection, Jim Smith collection, and he has received letters from numerous people because he owned a business. Well, you may put those letters in alphabetical order by the person's last name, and then within the folder, all the letters are in chronological order by creation date. But you can also have things in geographical order. Well, let's say you have a collection of somebody who was a great traveler and did amazing things. And people are interested in where this person traveled. You may end up putting the collections in geographical order. And then within that order, you may put first letters and then photographs. These are kind of like, sub-series under the geographical arrangement. Or then there's subject arrangement. Sometimes that happens too. And then there's numerical arrangement. Certainly this becomes more common in city documents, marriage licenses, and whatnot. So, there's all kinds of ways that you can arrange collections, but you have to make sure you pick the correct arrangement that makes the most sense. So, in your book, Figure 5.2, they give you 2 examples of 5 levels of organization. One is an archives, like the college archives, and then the other one is the special collections, usually personal papers of faculty. If you're a historical society, it could be family papers or business records or whatnot. So on the left, you have an archive. So the archives, that's a repository. And then an example of a record group would be the Vice President Academic Affairs. And within that record group could be a number of series. And one in particular, one could be curriculum files. Okay? And then within the curriculum files is a file unit. And one of those file units is School of Social Work under the curriculum files. And of course, within that file unit, which is a folder with all the important papers on School of Social Work, could be a memo of June 12th. That's an item. On the right, we have the repository, which is special collections. And the record group could be the Long Island Wine Growers. And one of the series are minutes of meetings. And in that series is one file unit, a folder with all the letters from 1985. And within that file unit, that folder with all those letters, you can pull out an item, which is a meeting of April 23rd of 1985. So when you have a collection that you're given, that you need to organize, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to survey the collection, which means you're going to inventory the collection. You just want to determine what is in the collection. And by doing that, you can determine the order before even organizing it. You never organize a collection until you survey it first, just to see where it's going to go, if it makes sense. And sometimes you find things in a collection while you're surveying it that doesn't make sense. But, take a note and keep on going through it, keep on inventorying it, because you may find the answer in the collection somewhere. So this helps you develop a plan, helps you determine how to sort the collection to series, and how to process a series into file units. So I have a video that that was produced at UMA a couple years ago, going through processing a really small collection. It's a really small one, but let's pretend it's a big one, because I kind of broke it down into series. Sometimes small collections don't have very many series, but to help you understand what I mean by series, I treat it like it was a huge collection, and I was explaining, these are letters and these are deeds and whatnot. So I want you to look at those 2 videos, okay? So you can understand what I'm talking about. And then we're going to be doing our second assignment, which will be due on April 1st, but I think it's important that we start working on it now, little by little. So this week you're going to read chapter 5. You're going to just read through my lecture notes, look at the 2 videos. I have a couple other videos that I'm going to produce that hopefully will help you. And then the assignments will be, of course, our quiz and working through a collection. Okay?